June 1942. A 16-year-old boy walks into a U.S. Marine recruiting office. Height 5'5". Weight 110 pounds. The recruiter doesn't even look up from his desk. He just laughs. "Go home, kid." The Navy. Too small. The Army paratroopers. Come back when you grow up. By every military standard, this boy was useless. A walking fatal flaw. Rejected, dismissed, laughed at. But those recruiters made one critical mistake. They saw a boy. They didn't see the weapon that poverty had created. They didn't see the eyes of a hunter who had been keeping his family from starvation for 5 years. This boy's name was Audie Leon Murphy. And in 30 months, this too small reject would become the most decorated soldier in American history. He would single-handedly stop an entire German company by climbing onto a burning tank that was seconds from exploding. But the story doesn't begin on the battlefield. It begins in hell. Hunt County, Texas. The Great Depression. Audie Murphy was the sixth of 12 children. His father, an impoverished sharecropper, abandoned the family when Audie was young. His mother worked herself to death trying to feed 12 mouths on nothing. When Audie was 16, she died of pneumonia. Suddenly, this 110-pound boy was the head of the family, the only provider for his younger siblings. His primary tool, a .22 rifle. His motivation, starvation. Listen to what a neighbor said about Murphy's marksmanship. "That boy could drop a running rabbit at 50 yards with a rifle most people couldn't hit a barn with." But here's what Murphy himself said. "If I don't hit what I shoot at, my family doesn't eat tonight." Let that sink in. Every bullet cost money the family didn't have. Every miss meant empty stomachs. Every shot had to count. This wasn't practice. This wasn't sport. This was survival. Under that pressure, Audie Murphy didn't just learn to shoot. He learned to kill. He developed what soldiers would later call a shooter's eye. A cold efficiency. No emotion. No hesitation. See the target, eliminate the target, move to the next target. That mindset, forged in the cotton fields of Texas, would one day terrify German soldiers across 3 countries. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor. For Audie Murphy, the war meant something different than it did for most Americans. It meant steady pay. 3 meals a day. Money to send home to his siblings. So he tried to enlist. The Marines laughed at him. The Navy rejected. The paratroopers told him to grow up. Finally, the regular Army infantry looked at this boy who looked 14, not 18. The recruiter sighed. He looked at the forged affidavit from Audie's sister claiming he was 18. He stamped the papers. The U.S. Army had no idea what it had just accepted. Private First Class David Mousier trained with Murphy. Here's what he remembered. "We all thought he was a mascot. The drill sergeants rode him mercilessly, called him baby, but then we got to the rifle range. Those baby blue eyes went cold as winter. He never missed, not once." July 1943. Company B, 15th Infantry Regiment landed in Sicily. This was Murphy's first real combat. And immediately, something became clear. This boy was different. Near Palermo, his unit was pinned down by a German machine gun nest. The doctrine said, wait for support, call for backup, don't take unnecessary risks. Murphy's doctrine said, my family doesn't eat if I wait. While the others took cover, Private Murphy used the terrain to work his way around the enemy position. Alone, he eliminated the entire crew with grenades. Then, in a move that would define his entire career, he turned their own machine gun on the retreating German forces. Captain Paul Harris wrote in his recommendation for a Bronze Star, "This soldier displays a natural aptitude for combat that is extraordinary." Extraordinary was an understatement. Audie Murphy had just discovered something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He was exceptionally good at killing. Sicily was just the beginning. The Italian campaign is where Murphy transformed from a good soldier into a walking nightmare for the Wehrmacht. At the Volturno River, October 1943, his squad was decimated by a German counterattack. Most men would retreat. Murphy grabbed a borrowed sniper rifle and held the position single-handedly. 5 German soldiers killed at over 300 yards. Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest medal in the army. Then came Anzio. The blood-soaked beachhead Churchill called the Wildcat. A German tank approached Murphy's position. The one thing infantry fears most. Murphy didn't panic. He crawled toward the tank using the terrain until he was at point-blank range. He destroyed it with a bazooka. Silver Star. He survived Sicily, Salerno, Anzio, Rome. He'd been wounded twice. He'd been promoted to sergeant. The too small farm boy now had a reputation that preceded him. German soldiers started calling him Der Teufel, the devil. But in August 1944 came the test that changed everything. Near Montélimar, France, his unit was ambushed. The lieutenant, his commander, was killed in the opening volley. The chain of command was broken. 18 Americans against over 100 Germans. For 2 hours, Sergeant Murphy held a critical crossroads. He directed his men. He exposed himself to fire. He personally accounted for 15 enemy dead. He held the line. October 14, 1944. The kid who was too small to enlist was promoted to second lieutenant. But combat has a price. By January 1945, Murphy was no longer the 16-year-old kid. He was 19, but he looked 40. He had seen almost every one of his original friends killed or wounded. He had personally killed over 100 enemy soldiers. His eyes had that 1,000-yard stare. And now he faced his greatest test. The Kalmar Pocket. January 1945. The Kalmar Pocket was the last piece of French soil the Wehrmacht controlled. Hitler had ordered it held at all costs. He sent his best, the 2nd Mountain Division. Elite troops. Veterans of the brutal Norwegian campaigns. Survivors of the Eastern Front. These weren't scared conscripts. These were professionals. For Company B, the situation wasn't just desperate. It was mathematically impossible. In 5 days of constant fighting, Company B had lost 102 men. Every officer except Murphy was dead or evacuated. From a full strength of 187 men, they were down to 40. Murphy himself was fighting with a fresh leg wound from shrapnel. He told no one. Private Anthony Abramsky described their condition. We were finished, done. Most of us hadn't slept in 3 days. Half the guys had frostbite. Our machine guns were freezing up. We tried to dig foxholes. The ground was like iron. January 26, 1945. Dawn was gray and bitter cold. Company B was strung out in a thin line along the edge of the Holzwicher forest. In front of them, a mile of open, frozen ground. They were sitting ducks. Murphy had positioned his only anti-tank capability, 2 M10 tank destroyers. He had his 40 exhausted men. And he had a field telephone line to artillery. That was it. That's all he had to stop what was coming. 1:00 p.m. The German artillery barrage began. 3 bursts. Shells exploding in the treetops. Showering the frozen ground with deadly hot steel. It lasted 30 minutes. The forest screamed. Then silence. 1:40 p.m. Private First Class Donald Ekman was the first to see them. You could see the pennants on the antennas of the German tanks, 6 of them, and behind them, Jesus Christ, 250 infantry, all in white snow camouflage, moving across that field like ghosts. Murphy's first action was to call for artillery support. But artillery alone wouldn't stop this. The Germans were too spread out. Too numerous. Moving too fast. At 600 yards, the M10 tank destroyers opened fire. Their first shots missed. The crews were exhausted, hands numb from the cold. The return fire from the German tanks was immediate and devastating. An 88 shell struck the rear M10 squarely in the turret. Boom! It burst into flames. The crew scrambled out, running for the woods. The forward M10, trying to move, slid sideways into a drainage ditch. Its tracks couldn't grip the frozen ground. The crew abandoned it and retreated. 2:20 p.m. Both tank destroyers were out of action. The German infantry was now closing to within 200 yards. This was the breaking point. The moment the position would be overrun. This is when Lieutenant Murphy made the decision that would defy all logic. He ordered his remaining 40 men to fall back, to retreat to prepared positions deeper in the woods. "Fall back," he yelled. But he himself didn't retreat. Instead, as his men ran for cover, Lieutenant Murphy ran forward, through the artillery fire, through the machine gun fire. He ran toward the burning M10 tank destroyer. The vehicle was fully engulfed in flames, black smoke pouring from the hull. At any moment, the thousands of rounds of ammunition and 300 gallons of gasoline inside would explode. This tank destroyer was a bomb. Murphy didn't hesitate. He climbed onto the back of the burning tank destroyer. He manned its .50 caliber machine gun. From this position, he was a perfect target. A single silhouetted figure standing on top of a bomb, completely exposed to 250 rifles and 6 tanks. Private Abramsky watched from the woods. "I saw Lieutenant Murphy climb on top of that burning tank. It was the greatest display of guts and courage I have ever seen." The .50 caliber Browning is a devastating weapon. In Murphy's hands, it became an instrument of precise destruction. That hunter's eye from the Texas cotton fields took over. For the next hour, this 19-year-old, 110-pound boy became a one-man army. He wasn't just firing. He was calculating. He held the field telephone in one hand, the trigger of the .50 cal in the other. He was calling in artillery strikes while firing the machine gun, creating a wall of steel. See a German soldier. Aim. Fire. Down. Next target. Aim. Fire. Down. No emotion. No hesitation. Just cold, deadly arithmetic. The German infantrymen got within 10 yards of Murphy's position. He killed them in the ditches, in the meadows, in the woods, wherever he saw them. The German forces found themselves in an impossible trap. Their tanks, which should have crushed the position in seconds, were now useless. They couldn't advance without their infantry. And their infantry was being systematically destroyed by a single machine gun firing from inside a cloud of black smoke. Technical Sergeant Morris Wald testified. Murphy's fire was incredibly effective. He wasn't just spraying bullets. Every burst was aimed. He was picking off German infantry like he was at a shooting gallery. The Germans tried everything. They hit the tank destroyer with shells. Shrapnel tore through Murphy's leg, his second wound of the day. He ignored it. He just kept firing. Just kept calling in artillery. 3:10 p.m. After 40 minutes of continuous firing, the .50 caliber started to slow down, running out of ammunition. The Germans sensed it. They started to rush forward. Murphy grabbed his carbine, started picking them off one by one. The Germans were now just 10 yards away. This was the end. Murphy made his last, most desperate call. He ordered the artillery to fire directly on his own position. The forward observer, Lieutenant Walter Weispfenning, refused. He knew it would mean certain death. Murphy screamed into the phone. "I'm giving you a direct order, fire on MY position now." The first 105 shells landed 50 yards away. The explosions threw frozen earth and shrapnel in all directions. German infantry caught in the open were torn apart. But Murphy, exposed on top of the burning vehicle, was also in the impact zone. The combination of his direct fire and the artillery exploding all around him finally broke the German attack. The surviving infantry, perhaps 100 men, turned and ran. The tanks, now without support, reversed course and withdrew. 3:20 p.m. After one impossible hour, the attack was over. Audie Murphy, his uniform scorched, his leg bleeding, finally climbed down from the M10. 10 minutes later, the tank destroyer exploded. He walked calmly back to the woodline where his men waited. According to Private Abramsky, he was scary calm. He asked if we had any casualties, made sure everyone was okay, then he sat down, lit a cigarette, and asked for a status report. His hands weren't even shaking. On that day, Audie Murphy killed or wounded an estimated 50 German soldiers. He alone stopped a combined arms assault by 250 elite troops and 6 tanks. He saved his company from certain destruction. But perhaps the most shocking part of this story is what happened after. The silence. In the decades after the war, historians searched for the German account of that day. They searched the military archives, the veteran organizations, the personal diaries. They found almost nothing. A near-complete absence of first-hand reports from the men who attacked Holzwihr. This silence is the real proof of what Audie Murphy did. The German war machine was built on pride, on elite training, on superiority. The 2nd Mountain Division had fought in Norway, in Finland, on the Eastern Front. They had seen everything, but they had never seen this. The idea that 250 of their best men, supported by 6 tanks, were not just defeated but humiliated by one 50-kilogram American boy standing on a burning tank, was a tactical defeat so shameful they simply erased it. It was incomprehensible. It didn't fit their doctrine. It didn't fit their worldview. The official German war diary for that day reads, "Attack on American positions near Holzwihr repulsed with heavy casualties. Enemy resistance heavier than expected." Heavier than expected. That was one man. They had met someone who was simply better at war than they were. And that recognition broke something fundamental in their warrior identity. The hunter had become the hunted. June 2, 1945. Near Salzburg, Austria. Lieutenant General Alexander Patch formally presented 2nd Lieutenant Audie Murphy with the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration. Murphy's military record remains unmatched by any American soldier. 33 decorations, including the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, the Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars, 3 Purple Hearts, plus 5 decorations from France and Belgium. The boy who was too small to be a Marine had become the most decorated American soldier of World War II. But this is not where Audie Murphy's story ends. This is where the real war begins. The war that never showed up in the official records. The war that had no medals. The war against his own mind. Murphy came home a hero. He was on the cover of Life magazine. He was given parades. He was invited to Hollywood. He became a movie star. To the public, this was the perfect Hollywood ending. But the public didn't see what happened at night. The man who had shown no fear on top of a burning tank was now terrified of the dark. Murphy suffered from chronic insomnia, recurring nightmares, hypervigilance that led him to sleep with a loaded pistol under his pillow. He was haunted, not by the men he killed, but by the men he couldn't save. Eventually, he couldn't even sleep in the house. He moved to his garage, slept with the lights on, because the darkness reminded him of night patrols. "I can't remember when I didn't have nightmares," Murphy wrote. "They became part of my life like breathing. A demon seemed to have entered my body." The war had ended for America, but it had never ended for Audie Murphy. Despite his own struggles, Murphy became one of the first and most important public advocates for veterans' mental health. In the 1960s, when battle fatigue was seen as weakness or cowardice, America's greatest hero stood up and said, "I have it." He gave thousands of other veterans permission to be human, permission to ask for help. In 1951, he married Pamela Archer. And this is the other hero of this story. Pamela saw the two men inside Audie, the hero and the demon. And unlike everyone else, she didn't run. For 20 years, Pamela stood by him. She was his anchor, his field modification against the chaos in his own mind. May 28, 1971. The impossible happened. Audie Murphy, the man who had survived every conceivable horror of war, died at age 45. Not in battle, but in a private plane crash in the mountains of Virginia. America mourned its greatest hero. But for Pamela Murphy, the real mission was just beginning. After Audie's death, the world discovered he had died in debt. Bad investments had left his wife with almost nothing. The world expected her to fade away. A tragic footnote in a hero's story. But they forgot who she was. She was the woman who had stood by Audie Murphy for 20 years. She was a warrior in her own right. Pamela Murphy walked into the Sepulveda Veterans Affairs Hospital in Los Angeles. And she asked for a job. not a high-level position. She took a job as a simple clerk, a patient liaison. For the next 35 years, Pamela Murphy dedicated her life to Audie's other war. She became a one-woman army for the veterans nobody else would listen to. She saw veterans shattered by Vietnam, suffering from the same battle fatigue that had haunted her husband, getting lost in the bureaucracy, and she became their advocate. She treated every single veteran, from the forgotten homeless soldier in the hallway to the decorated colonels, with the same respect. She saw her husband's face in every one of them. She wasn't just preserving his memory. She was finishing his mission. Pamela worked at that VA hospital until she was 87 years old, finally retiring in 2007. She never remarried. When she died in 2010, she was buried next to him at Arlington National Cemetery. The mechanic reunited with her pilot. The recruiters saw a fatal flaw. The Army found a secret weapon. The Germans saw an impossible situation. Audie Murphy saw a problem that needed fixing. The world saw a hero. Pamela saw a man. The 110-pound farm boy who was too small to be a soldier became the man who stopped an army to save his friends. And in doing so, he and the wife who loved him saved thousands more long after the guns fell silent. That is the story of Audie Murphy, the boy who stood on a burning bomb and became immortal.